Conflicts and deep tensions continue to challenge peace around the world, and the meaning of peace can differ greatly between people. Next, peace builders from Somalia, Ukraine, and other places will share their unique perspectives on peace across the cultures.
Now joining us on stage are Mohamed Elsanousi, the Executive Director of the Network for Religious and Traditional Peacemakers, Piya Itkonen, the Somalia Country Director of Finn Church Aid, and Patricia Maruschak, the Ukraine Country Director of the Finn Church Aid. We'll also hear reflections from South Sudan, Palestine, Uganda, and other places through short video messages. The discussion is going to be hosted by Ruth Owen from Finn Church Aid. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to our guests.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. And thank you, Alan and Zara, for a wonderful introduction. My name is Ruth Owen, and I work for Finn Church Aid, Kirkon Okamanapo, an organization that supports the right to education, the right to livelihood, and the right to peace in some of the most fragile contexts all over the world. And I'm so proud to be joined here today by Patricia, Piya, and Mohamed, my colleagues, who have a great experience in building and maintaining peace. Before I introduce them more fully, I want to reflect with you about the concept of peace. It's no escaping that we live in turbulent times, rising conflict, rising crises. Once again, peace has been shattered in Europe by the invasion of Ukraine. So what does peace mean in 2025? Well, if you speak to different people, it means different things. If you speak to different governments, even different political outlooks. But is peace just an absence of violence? Personally, I think not. If we think about Zara, whose family comes from Afghanistan, that's a country that technically is at peace, and yet a significant part of the population don't have the right to education, don't have the right to livelihood, don't have the chance of a free life. So in the next 40 minutes, I'd like to explore that concept of peace. And to help us, we have our 3 panel members here, but we also have global voices from 9 countries in which Finn Church Aid works. Ukraine, Palestine, South Sudan, Myanmar, Somalia, and other places. And these are people who have made videos exclusively for the World Village Festival here today and have shown us their trust and even in some cases their bravery by speaking freely in countries where that's not always a right. So let me introduce more fully my 3 speakers that I have here live with me today, and then after I've done the introductions, I hope that you will join me in welcoming them. First of all, Mohamed Elsanousi, Executive Director of the Network for Religious and Traditional Peacemakers, but that's not all. Mohamed is also a commissioner on the Commission for International Religious Freedom in the United States and the founder of Faith for Vaccines. Welcome, Mohamed.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And now I come on to introducing 2 of my lovely colleagues. Piya, Country Director for Finn Church Aid Somalia, but Piya also has almost 20 years of experience in humanitarian response and international development for USAID, for IMA, World Health, and the Elizabeth Glaser Pediatric AIDS Foundation. But it's really Piya's fantastic experience in bridging between governments, civil society organizations, and people who fund that kind of humanitarian response that makes her experience here relevant today. Welcome, Piya.
Thank you.
And it's a welcome back to Patricia, who last year was on this very stage where she shared the challenges of being a humanitarian worker in Ukraine, and her speech was very warmly received. So Patricia is the country director for Finn Church Aid in Ukraine, but has a long experience with the country, working for the Canadian International Development Agency in many places around the world. Patricia is Canadian, but with Ukrainian roots. And it's with great joy that we welcome you back here, and we welcome all of our panelists here today. So I mentioned these global voices, and as said, we've got a number of videos to show you from people all over the world. They come from different walks of life. They're politicians, they're school children, they're parents, they're community leaders. But we first ask them a very specific question. To you, what is peace? Roll first video, please.
For me, peace looks like a world where everyone can live safely without fear, where families are together, and where children can play without hearing the sounds of war.
ဟုတ်ကဲ့ peace လို့ပြောလိုက်ရင်တော့အဓိပ္ပာယ်ဖွင့်ဆိုချက်တွေတော့အများကြီးရှိရပေါ့နော်ကျွန်တော်ရဲ့ခံယူချက်ဆိုရင်တော့လူဒီမှာ need and when ဆိုပြီးတော့နှမျိုးရှိရပေါ့အဓိကဒီ need တွေကိုကျွန်တော်တို့ပြည့်မီအောင်ဆောင်ရွက်နိုင်တဲ့အခင်းချင်းက peace လို့ပြောလို့ရပါတယ်ကျွန်တော်မြန်မာနိုင်ငံမှာဆိုရင်တော့လောလောဆယ်တိုက်ပွဲတွေမရှိတဲ့နေအခင်းချင်းကိုတော့ peace လို့ပြောချင်ပါတယ်ဟုတ်
As a senior male officer at FCA, I've learned that the peace is not only the absence of violence, but also represents dignity, access, inclusion, and the chance to rebuild with hope.
Я, як мама 3 діток багатодітної сім'ї, для мене мир – це коли мої рідні, моя сім'я жива, здорова, немає вибухів, діти спокійно сплять, ходять до школи, розвиваються. А як я бачу в новинах такі жахіття, яке в нас зараз твориться на Україні, душа і серце дуже в тяжкому стані.
Nabadda waxay ila micno tahay meel aan olna aan ka taagnayn ay nabad ay jirto meeshaasoon nabad lagu seexnay nabadna lagu soo kacay nabadda haddaan maqlo waa sida aan olna aanu ka jirin caawa haddaa la seexdo aan jirin walwal oo minaha caawa ma waxbaa kaa dhimanaya iyo waxaas aysan jirin.
Peace is the mutual flourishing of different groups and communities that live side by side. So this means that every single group lives in freedom, in security, in justice, protecting people's human rights. It's not just the absence of violence, but it's the mutual flourishing where everyone can enjoy life itself.
Why I call peace is that when you wake up in the morning, you know I have work to do, I have children to feed, I have a mother to care for. Why I call peace is just equilibrium. It doesn't need to necessarily be the best, like happiness 24/7. No, there should never miss the little bit disorganization of the world, but it should just be equal, like equilibrium. That's what I mean by peace.
ငြိမ်းချမ်းရေးဆိုတာကကျမတို့ရဲ့မိသားစုတွေမှာဆိုရင်ဖေမေကအဆင်ပြေပြီးတော့မှသားသမီးတွေကိုချစ်ချစ်ခင်ခင်နဲ့တရက်တက်တရက်စာပေါ်ဝါလီလီနဲ့စားရအောင်ကျမတို့ငြိမ်းချမ်းရေးတယ်နော်
It's a baseline for everything. If there is peace, if I'm looking at a situation where there is peace, I'm looking at a situation where kids are going to school. I'm looking at a situation where people are walking around and they're not in fear, there is no tension. Basically, you're looking at development from a human security perspective.
Мир, мабуть, це посмішки людей, які знаходяться поряд, посмішки дітей, можливість спілкуватися необмежено, а не перебувати постійно в якихось укриттях, сховищах, десь чекати на те, як буде працювати ревун, як буде завивати тривога. Мабуть, оце мир.
So many different ideas there, but I felt like there were some commonalities there. Safety, yes, but also work, school, development, freedom, connection, even smiles were mentioned there. Mohamed, I'd like to come to you first to explore further into this concept. You have a wealth of experience in building peace with different groups. Are there commonalities, or do things vary when we talk about peace from context to context?
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Ruth, and thank you, of course, to the World Village Festival for having us here as Featured 8. We really appreciate that. And, you know, this topic is so important, and it is very evident. All of you in this room, I can see the room is only, you know, standing alone room. So that's really a clear testament also to your concern about peace and how important as a fundamental aspect in our life. As you just saw the videos here, definitely peace is different from context to another context. However, there are some commonalities as well. And I'm going to just maybe mention a few of these commonalities in peace. But of course, the difference in need, the difference in context, the difference in what peace means to them. Some of them mentioned it's not only the absence of violence. And I would say peace is not only the absence of war, but yet there are some similarities when we are talking about peace building. So for instance, you know, for us, inclusivity is so critical in peace building. This notion of no one left behind when we are engaging in peace building is so critical. Because we believe everybody has something to contribute to resolve a specific problem. That's why we're looking into the diverse communities, whole of society approach, we call it. Everybody in the society, whether you are minority, whether you are majority, whether you are a person with disability, whether you are woman or youth or girl, you have something to contribute. So inclusivity is very critical in advancing peace building. Statistics have shown us when women are involved in peace building, peace agreements are more likely to be durable. Peace agreement has actually increased. In fact, increased by 64% to hold for about 20 years when women are at the table. But unfortunately, the role of women is underrepresented. We know that in peace building. Similarly in youth as well. So we have to be inclusive when we come to peace building. Another aspect I just mentioned quickly, we don't have time here, which is this notion of solidarity and humility when we engage in peace building. And this is one of the principles, or among the principles that were clearly identified in the process of principles of peace, solidarity and humility. We have to show our solidarity with those who are marginalized, with those who are impacted and infected. Solidarity is so important. We have to stand to one another. We have to stand shoulder to shoulder. If you are a majority, you are a minority somewhere else. And if you are a minority, you are a majority somewhere else. So oftentimes we see that we bring everybody around the table. Around the table, no one left behind, and put the problem that we are facing in the center of the table. And then ask every diverse community, every religion, every tradition, every custom, every culture, what do you have to contribute actually to resolve this problem? Because when the problem comes, they don't actually ask about what language you speak, what color of your skin, what culture. They come to hit you as a human being. So we need that approach.
Fantastic, thank you. Yeah, please. And behind us, we're seeing some photographs of you stand shoulder to shoulder with people and talking and talking to those different groups and bringing people together, which is so important. Patricia, we're about to see some photos of you also and the work that FCA Ukraine does. People in Ukraine are living under unimaginable circumstances, attacks, air raids. Yet, for us, sometimes I think it must be so difficult to even imagine peace in circumstances like that. But when we saw the videos, Andre and Anastasia from the videos, they had an idea of what peace should look like. So what is your experience? Is peace something that people in Ukraine have the mental space to think about?
Well, based on my experience of living in Ukraine for the past 3 years, no one thinks about peace more than people living through conflict. But you have to understand that there's a lot of different ways to think about peace. And I would say some of the main components that I've seen are there. Of course, there's the desire for physical safety for you, for your loved ones. There's the wish that your children can go to school. Anastasia mentioned this, uninterrupted right now in Ukraine. Children, whenever there's an air alarm, even if it's a false alarm, have to stop what they're doing, go into the bomb shelter of the school. There's a lot of interruption, a lot of learning loss as a result. Parents wish, and children and students and teachers wish that this was not the case. They want to go back to a time when learning was easy. A very banal example, but I think people really wish, when they think about peace, for the chance to sleep uninterrupted, to be able to go to bed and not be woken up by air alarms or explosions. There have been times in the past 3 years in Kyiv, for example, where we can go 5 days, up to a month, where there are attacks every single night. And often people outside of the country ask me, well, isn't that scary? And it is, and it can be scary in the moment, but the overwhelming feeling is exhaustion. And this was a surprise to me. That exhaustion of constantly not being able to sleep properly impacts every part of everyone's lives. And it's a small thing, but it has a huge impact. I would also say a lot of people are thinking about a return to normalcy, what life was like before the full-scale war began. They're thinking about the return to homes and cities and communities, jobs and schools that they've been forced to leave behind or have been destroyed. But unfortunately, the war has changed everything. It's impossible to go home just for some people. Their homes have been damaged or destroyed, their towns or cities have been damaged or destroyed, or they're under occupation. Reunions with loved ones are also a challenge. People have chosen to leave the country. Some people have died, soldiers and civilians. Everyone in the country knows someone who has lost their life. And families have been separated because some have left. Some, again, are living under occupation. You can have some contact with them, but you can't see them. We have staff who haven't seen their parents for years. And this idea of returning to a pre-war peace life is very difficult because not only have the circumstances changed, but people have changed. Everyone has experienced trauma, injury, anxiety, fear, and loss of some kind. So, the end of fighting is important. It's absolutely necessary for peace, but it has to be more than that. Peace requires a lot more than just the end of fighting. It also requires healing, physical, emotional, mental, and this is why FCA's psychosocial support, mental health work is so important for teachers and for students and parents. It requires the acceptance of new realities and of loss and a lot of pain. And it's going to require for Ukrainians to have the time to grieve the things that they have lost, people, belongings, places, and also loss of opportunities, things that they had planned that will never happen now. And to be able to put distance between those painful realities and the present day. And I just want to end by saying that, a lot of people talk about, well, when there's peace, then we can rebuild. And I think it's really important to remember that rebuilding will not just be buildings and roads and brick and mortar. It's also going to be internal rebuilding. People need to come to terms with what has happened and to create new relationships with themselves and with their neighbors and their communities and their family members. Yeah. Absolutely.
Absolutely true, and I think it's that internal peace building that sometimes we forget about, but actually takes the more investment and the more energy. Piya, I'd like to come to you thirdly. You have a long experience in working in Somalia, a country that is still bearing the injuries of a brutal civil war in the 90s, and also an ongoing insurgency from militant groups like Al-Shabaab. What does peace look like to Somali people?
I think what Mohamed and Patricia had talked about, I think there's not so much different in the realities in Somalia. And when you look at Somalia complex histories and social fabrics, the definition of peace means different things to different people, depending on who you ask, which generations as well. In the panel earlier, there was cross-generations discussions about the perception of peace, those that lived through the war, those that live now still during the conflict, different violence, and those who grow up abroad and surrounded by peace. But when we talk about peace, we need to move beyond the ideas of peace is simply just the absence of war. And I'm very humble because when I walk around the festival earlier, I saw many Somalis, and I feel a little bit I don't want to be presumptuous in assuming I am speaking for the definition of what Somali means by the word peace. So I ask most of my colleagues, the Somalia colleagues and the partners, and over the years. So I'm speaking today and reflecting on what I have learned, what I have been privileged enough to experience in Somalia, is that peace means going to bed and waking up with hope, walking to the markets or traveling by road from the city to the next city within Somalia, going to school without being judged or without worried about IDF or IEDs, and also when their future for their children is secured and guaranteed. One of the staff colleagues who had mentioned what peace meant to him, he said, if you ask me today what I mean by peace, I would want the end of violence. But if you ask me 10 or 15 years from now, when the war have ended, he said, peace means we are equal, inclusive, everyone have equal rights and opportunities, have an alternative and access to educations, employments, and future that is full of hopes and ability to plan.
Good words. So I am hearing a lot of commonalities, that just to be safe, to have opportunities for your family, and yet you've also brought up that it does vary between people. And so we come to the subject of this discussion, what happens when my peace doesn't look like your peace? Because when ideas of peace are opposing, it often causes conflict, sometimes deadly. I'm thinking of what we're seeing, for example, in South Sudan right now, where the peace accords are breaking down in front of our eyes. So what happens, what should happen when ideas of peace oppose? I'd like to go back to our global voices on the video now, and we ask them a second question, which is, what should happen when people don't agree on what peace looks like? Second video, please.
Because I feel like peace revolves over one thing. We may have different definitions, but at the end of the day, we shall meet at a certain crossroad. So yeah, that's just it. When the person brings that definition, I bring mine. At the end of the day, we might all be going against each other, but we shall still meet one another because we are not parallel.
Вважаю, що так, люди конфліктують як в нашій країні, так і в інших країнах. І може якесь є непорозуміння між людьми, але я вірю чистосердечно, що люди домовляться і буде мир. І я дуже в це вірю, і вірять дуже багато людей, мільйонів людей.
I think the best thing is to explore all other options other than violence, because speaking from someone who is a South Sudanese, lives, breathes, works in South Sudan, conflict has taken us back years that we are never going to recover.
If people don't agree about that peace, then they should try to walk in our shoes. Talk to each other with respect, listen carefully, and try to solve problems without using violence.
We should focus on shared needs, such as safety. Build peace through trust, dialogue, and active participation, including all the groups, such as women, youth, people with disabilities, being on the same table during all the decision-making process.
community နဲ့တယောက်ကအမြင်မတူဘူးပေါ့နော်သဘောထားတွေခွဲလွဲတဲ့အခါမှာတယောက်နဲ့တယောက်ညှိနှိုင်းကြမှာပေါ့ညှိနှိုင်းတဲ့အခါမှာကြာရင်ကျမတို့ကညှိနှိုင်းချင်းဆိုင်နဲ့ညှိနှိုင်းလို့ရတယ်ဒါမှမဟုတ်လို့ရှိရင်လည်းတယောက် ဂျားခံပြီးတော့ပေါ့နော်ဥမာအဖေနဲ့သားသမီးကြားမှာဖြစ်ရင်ကျမတို့ကအမေကနေပြီးတော့မှဂျားခံဝင်ပြီးတော့မှဆွေးနွေးပေးတာမျိုးတို့တွေလုပ်ပြီးလို့ရှိရင်တော့ကျမတို့လည်းဒီမိသားစုကတော့အရင်လိုမျိုး
The only way that you can maybe solve it is to despite people differences, beliefs and cultural is to come is maybe to invite the community together and then despite all those differences making them to have one objective that is having peace.
Definitely we should not go to places of violence or war as we see unfortunately around us in different contexts in the world, but they should engage in dialogue, in negotiations for the sake of all people, because when conflicts do lead to war, everyone loses.
Всі завжди можна знайти якийсь компроміс, знайти щось, що нас буде об'єднувати. Я не кажу про Росію. Тут складне питання. Чому? Тому що навіть будь-які намагання піти на якісь поступки, на переговори, закінчиться тим, що стаються або Харків, або Суми, або Кривий Ріг, або Київ і інші локації, де нам надіслали подарунки наші північні сусіди. Але треба шукати, знаходити через силу, через перемовини, через щось, що буде загальне для всіх в баченні людей взагалі.
So I'm sensing there's less certainty there. There's no easy solution, but I'm hearing from person to person the need to bring people together for dialogue, for communities to come together. Patricia, Andrei at the end there talks about compromise amongst Ukrainians. He excludes Russia because of ongoing attacks, what he calls gifts that are sent to places, devastating effects there. But among Ukrainians, do you get the sense that there is some idea, some consensus of what the country should look like when there is peace?
So Martin Luther King said, "Without justice, there can be no peace." And I think that this quote really resonates for Ukraine today, for the Ukrainian context. The current US president has decided that there should be a peace negotiation, peace talks and negotiation and a deal in place for Ukraine. But I think it's important to know that in an armed conflict, peace can't be a one-sided situation. And you can't make a peace deal with an invader who doesn't want peace. So if that is the context that Ukrainians are faced with, I think it's important to acknowledge that there are some things that are worth fighting for. And I would suggest that some of those things are freedom, democracy, sovereignty, and the right to exist as a nation. So yes, Ukrainians are very, very tired of war and all the sacrifices it's requiring of them, and there are many sacrifices on all levels. But peace at any cost is not an option for Ukraine. This is a country that is literally fighting for their survival, for their existence, and this is not something that I would wish on any country or any community. But if we follow the example of Andriy and we take Russia out of the equation for now, there will still be a lot of internal peace work that's going to be required in the country. Social cohesion is already strained because of the war, and even when the war ends, when the war ends or there's victory, as Ukrainians say, it'll continue to be strained. Some people have left the country, and some people will return when the war ends, and those who stayed and endured are going to have to make peace with those who return. There are a lot of people who are fighting, and then there are a lot of people who have evaded military service. When the war ends, these two groups are going to have to make peace with each other. There is a large portion of the country in eastern Ukraine that has been severely damaged, physically damaged, whole communities destroyed and eliminated. And these people are going to have to make peace with their fellow countrymen in the West, which has been far less physically impacted by the war. So there are many more dichotomy examples that I could give you about the situation in Ukraine, but all of them, again, emphasize that peace isn't just about the absence of fighting or violence. It's about negotiation, acceptance, grieving, and acknowledgement of loss, and the willingness to move forward together. And this is a big mandate for a wounded country, but it's extremely important.
Absolutely. And please. And I know that chats in between ourselves, we have also noted that sometimes it seems like the world is talking about peace for Ukraine without actually talking to Ukrainians themselves. And that's absolutely something that resonates very strongly with me and probably with you as well. Piya, FCA has years of peace work in Somalia, also working with the Peacemakers Network as well. And that takes the form of supporting peace clubs in school, but also helping local governance and the formations of district councils, for example. Can you share a story or an experience of how that process works or maybe doesn't work when people don't agree what peace should look like?
Thank you. That's a really important question, and I think it's especially a very real one in Somalia and many other contexts now that we see today. And we have, in our work in Somalia, seen this play out during a district council formation process. And we have supported with our partners in Galgayo. During the process here, we had the pressure coming down from high up, say, to speed up the process, and the community actually pushed back. They wanted transparency, they want to be heard, and most importantly, they want women to be at the table for the elections. So instead of imposing the process and push ahead with the negotiations and the facilitations, we paused the process, and we established a peace committee that is composed of many people from the different communities. We brought in elders, we brought in also youth and women network, peace mothers, together with diverse clans within that communities to have a discussions, to create a dialogue that is really participatory as well as inclusive. And this local platform, the peace committees, is where we support the community to turn resistance into collaborations and start building trust from the ground up. So peace building is not just about speed. It's not about imposing one ideology of peace over one of the others, but when the community comes together, the solutions is much more sustainable. And for that example, what we see is that what Patricia had mentioned, peace cannot be imposed from the outsider. So peace should be centered around people. It means navigating our differences through an open dialogue, transparency, and participatory inclusiveness. And this requires participation, require flexibility and patience. Really, just the trust in the local actors to play the role and to take the lead in the peace building. And FCA, our work in Somalia, we really, we see ourselves as facilitators to create the space for these conversations to happen in a respectful and inclusive manner.
Yeah. So no, I understand. Sometimes it's almost like you need to take a step back to take the steps forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you, Piya. And Mohamed, you've had such a long career in peace work. Are there any particular examples that stick in your mind where the peace work succeeded or even failed?
Yeah. No, thank you so much. I mean, Ruth, thank you. You give me the opportunity to tell stories, right? Yeah, I like to tell stories. Look, let me, Piya said something very critical. He said peace needs to come from within. And that's very critical. FCA work in Somalia and help the Somali elders and clan leaders to agree on a constitution, to come up with the process that can guarantee a smooth, peaceful transition of power. The political process. That happened. Yes, Somalia is not perfect, but the transition of power that FCA helped to bring the clan leaders together to work on that, it's working. It's still there a problem in the country, but they agree on an election that they have a political leadership that is coming from within. Now to your question, answering your question. Let me take you to Central African Republic. We have been working there with FCA office was created there in 2013. And the conflict started, right? But we were on the ground engaging people from religious communities, particularly from the Christian communities and Muslim communities. Bring them to dialogue, to talk. And we are able to do interfaith dialogue, addressing the rift within the Muslim community and addressing the rift within the Christian community before bringing them to the interfaith dialogue, right? Now, the discussion continues, engaging in an inclusive way, bringing women and youth and everybody at the table. That process actually helped to bring the minority communities into the political process, basically participating in government. From the minority communities, they included a minister for education in the government. The minister visited Finland here in Helsinki, and he said, because of the engagement of Finchurch 8 and the dialogue, I am a minister of education now coming from the minority community. Very clear, specific outcome of the dialogue. In the same process, that made it possible. Earlier you saw my picture with the late Pope Francis, right?
Oh, Kimo, can we get that
Maybe
picture?
if the technology guys can help us to bring it back, because there is a context with it.
Yeah, so very first video,
that
was Mohammed with the late Pope Francis.
Ruth, that picture, when I saw the Holy Father, I want to thank him because he went to Central African Republic. And he went there during the wartime, okay? International community, the multilateralism, the French troop on the ground told him, Holy Father, don't come, it's a dangerous place. He said, no, I'm going. And he went there. Who actually helped to obtain the ceasefire for the Holy Father to visit? Who? An insider mediator woman. A committed, faithful woman was able to obtain ceasefire for 24 hours for the Holy Father to visit. She talked to the Selika, to Antibellica, the two groups fighting. She got 24-hour ceasefire. The Holy Father visited Bangui, capital of Central African Republic, insisted to go to the most dangerous place, which is the central mosque, majority of the communities. And he met with the Imam, and there said what? Faith over fear. Faith over fear. Now, he got that trust from the Muslim community. That helped them as a minority to engage with the majority. That helped them to engage in the political process. That helped them to have a minister, to come to Finland. That helped them to advance education in the country. These are specific outcomes when we look into the peace building. And I can go on and on and give you some examples. But the peace building process, we have a couple of minutes to go. The peace building process needs to also connect with development. So critical. The woman in Central African Republic, Hajja Asta Musa, the head of the Women Association, she said to me, Mohammed, you have been coming to us here for the last, you came to CAR 15 times, but we cannot eat peace. We cannot eat peace. We need livelihood, we need education. That's why these are the three thematic areas that we focus on as an FCA. We work on educating people. Education is so critical. We work in livelihood, and peace building will come to complement that. Now, you have the two country directors here, Ukraine and Somalia. But we are so privileged to have country directors also. Please stand to give you, so people can know. You have Uganda, we have Kenya, we have Jordan and Syria, we have South Sudan. Country directors in Finland, in Helsinki, made the work possible for them to support those who are in need by the support of the Finnish people. So we are so delighted and grateful and blessed to have the opportunity to serve those who are in need because of the work of Finchurch 8. Thank you so much.
Wow. Wow. And what an amazing story to move into our final segment. Thank you so much, Mohamed. And as we move into our final segment, and as I start getting warning looks for running out of time, I would actually like to turn to you in the audience here. Because here in Finland, we have had peace for a long time. We've had a long period of peace. And it's something that maybe we've taken for granted. I'd like to ask you a quick question. Who here in the last year has thought about peace? Raise your hands. Okay, interesting. Maybe I should rephrase that. Who here, keep your hands up. Who here in the last year has thought about war or the loss of peace in Finland and the potential for that? Yeah. A few more. No, it's interesting. You can put your hands down. It's obvious we have views on peace. And we have an outlook, and we think about it. And yet, it can seem so difficult, so intangible to have any kind of influence as just average people at home. It seems like these decisions are being made way, way over our head. And yet, there are small little things we can do. If you're interested after this presentation, please take the time to hang around and talk to our panelists, or go to the FCA stand and talk to people about what you can do to get involved. But just to finish up, one sentence, guys. What can the average person here do to maintain peace in their country, or even support peace in other countries? Piya, you first. One sentence.
I think I'm going to have to go with 2 sentences.
All right, fine.
I think one of the things that we can do is to stand with people who are already doing that work, because it's not the courage that they lack, it's the visibility and the support. And the other sentence that I wouldn't put out there is that peace is about speaking to each other, not about each other. And there shouldn't be pro this or pro that. Everyone should be pro peace.
Patricia, anything to add?
I would say stay engaged, know what's happening in your country, and stay informed, but know where your information is coming from.
Yeah. Absolutely true. And to wrap up, what can people do?
So what I would say is perkestamenten. Don't give up. Perkestamenten. So yeah, so I did it right.
Periksiantamaton.
Periksiamenton. So don't give up. Don't give up. Keep trying. Don't give up. Keep trying, and get involved in peace building.
Absolutely. These are yes. Thank you, Mohamed, and thank you for all our panelists. These are fine words to end on, but if you want to continue the conversation, then please, I invite you to go next door through this door that is being revealed slowly behind you. If you want to chat more, ask questions, we will be there. Otherwise, I just want to say thank you, panelists, and thank you, audience. Have a wonderful and peaceful time at the World Village Festival. Thank you.